If you spend enough time watching finance videos on YouTube, you might be panicked into thinking that a market crash is staring us in the face and is waiting for us just around the next corner. Well, frankly, nobody knows if that's true, and to be honest, I've seen more money lost by people anticipating a crash than has ever been lost in a crash itself. As the line from The Big Short famously goes,
I may have been early, but I'm not wrong.
It's the same thing!
And the earlier you are, the wronger you are. But one thing is certain, if you're planning for a retirement of 30 to 40 years, there will be multiple crashes that occur. And when you're relying on your capital to produce your income, there needs to be a plan in place for this, especially now that the majority of people are using flexible withdrawal methods in retirement, such as flexi-access drawdown, where income isn't guaranteed. So in today's video, building on the previous episode in this series, which focused on how to invest your pension drawdown, we're going to be looking at the following, all of which are in the timestamps in the description below. How to allocate cash in your pension drawdown to reduce your risk and how much to allocate, the principles of dynamic spending and how to apply them, and some other strategies to help reduce your drawdown risk. If you're here for the first time, folks, I'm Chris Bourne. I'm a financial planner based here in the UK, specialising in helping people achieve tax-efficient financial independence. So if that's the kind of stuff that you like, be sure to subscribe to my channel and turn on your notifications. It's all completely free. And with that said, let's get into today's video. In my previous video in this drawdown series, I discussed sequence of returns risk and how the order in which you receive your returns makes such a big difference when you're drawing money out. Two different portfolios side by side may produce the same average return over a 5-year period, but if one of those portfolios got off to a bad start and produced negative returns in the first couple of years while you're drawing money out, you'd have less money at the end of 5 years in that portfolio than you would in the other one, which has produced a steadier, more consistent return. Even if the first portfolio rebounded strongly after that poor start, the fact that you've sold shares while the values have been falling means that you've had to sell more shares in order to get the income amount that you want. And you've then got less shares to be able to benefit from any rebound. One way of reducing that sequence of returns risk is to put cash aside within your pension drawdown account. I talked about this in my last video, so I'll give a little recap here. It's like putting money into a bank account within your pension account. You can then take your withdrawals just from the cash part of the pension, which is stable and doesn't fluctuate in value, thereby protecting your pot. So how does that work in practice, and how much should you actually set aside? Well, on all good platforms, you should be able to view your investments and your cash holdings within each wrapper account. A wrapper being something like a flexi-access drawdown. Whenever you sell investments, the value of what you've sold will be transferred into cash first before it's paid out to your own bank. Instead of paying it straight into your bank though, the cash can actually be left inside the wrapper indefinitely. What your platform should then enable you to do is choose to take your withdrawals just from that cash holding instead of across all of the investments in the drawdown plan. That enables you to choose an opportune time to top up the cash when the investments have grown as opposed to when they might be falling, which gives you better protection against sequence of returns risk. As mentioned in my How to Invest Your Drawdown video though, the obvious downside of holding too much cash is that it won't grow and will therefore create a drag on performance. That's why the most that people generally hold in cash is around 2 years worth of income, or a maximum of 10% of the account value, whichever is less. These are just rules of thumb, but there is some historical data backing up the 2 years of cash idea, because the stats show that stock market values increase over a 2-year period just over 90% of the time, meaning that an increase isn't guaranteed, but the odds are in your favour. There are times, however, when more than 2 years or 10% of cash might be held in pension drawdown or another type of wrapper account on a platform, such as an ISA. And that is when you're exhausting one wrapper completely before starting to access another. Now this is slightly more complex planning that I tend to do with my clients when there's a good tax reason for taking everything out of an ISA or a general investment account, let's say, before touching a pension. That would mean there need to be totally different investment strategies for the accounts. And whereas there may be very little cash in the pension drawdown account, there could be much higher holdings of cash in the others. More on that in my next video though. This video is part of a series on UK Pension Drawdown, and I've put it all in a special playlist that will be on the end screen of this video and in the description below for you to watch after this one. Another philosophy that's out there for protecting your retirement income and giving greater confidence that it will last throughout your life is one championed by Vanguard, and that's the principle of dynamic spending. The single aim of dynamic spending is to make your pot of money more sustainable throughout retirement and better equipped to deal with market fluctuations. A standard approach to taking income in retirement might be to choose an income of, let's say, £25,000 a year, increasing each year in line with inflation. So if inflation was 2%, your income would rise to £25,500 in year 2, £26,010 in year 3, and so on. That allows you to budget for costs easily. But as we know, there's a chance that you could run out of money during your lifetime if market conditions are poor. A traditional alternative to that would be to, let's say, take 4 or 5% of the plan's value every year. That would protect your pot from running down to nothing, but your income levels could be very erratic. If your pot started at £500,000 and you were taking 5%, that would be £25,000 a year. But if the value fell to £400,000, 5% of that would be £20,000 a year. Now that's quite a pay cut. So what dynamic spending proposes is that you set a fixed income level for retirement, say £25,000 on a £500,000 pot, then you adjust it each year depending on how the investments perform, subject to a ceiling and a floor. So let's assume you choose a ceiling of 5% and a floor of minus 2.5%. Even if your portfolio increased by 10% in the first year, you would increase your income by just 5% to £26,250 the following year. If it fell by 10%, you'd reduce your income by 2.5% to £24,375 the following year. Now, Vanguard have conducted a fair amount of research based on historic returns and projected future returns, and compared the pound plus inflation approach and the dynamic spending approach against a number of different benchmarks. These benchmarks included how much you can sustainably spend in retirement, how long your money will last, and how much will be left over. In all cases, the dynamic spending approach scored more highly. When comparing how much you can sustainably spend, Vanguard looked at how much you should be able to draw from a portfolio with an 85% chance of not running out of money based on historical returns. They found that on an £800,000 pot, the average dynamic spending total was £46,400 a year, far more than the £37,600 allowed by the pound plus inflation strategy. When testing how long income could last for, they found that if you had a starting income level of £40,000 a year from that pot, you'd have a 97.6% chance of not running out of money over 30 years using dynamic spending. Whereas if you just increased your withdrawal every year in line with inflation, that probability dropped to 76%. If you wanted a more lavish lifestyle and pushed the starting income level up to £50,000 a year, the chance of the pot lasting for 30 years did drop to 73% with dynamic spending. But that's far better than the 29% probability you'd have if you use the inflation increase method. One thing that is guaranteed to increase the probability of a happy retirement is tapping the like button below, so don't forget to do that if you're finding any of this useful. Also, if you'd like to get the Vanguard research on dynamic spending, please let me know in the comments below and I'd be happy to send to you. So what other strategies are available to reduce your drawdown risk? Well, the most effective way of reducing your risk may sound overly simplistic, but it has to be stated. Have additional income streams. It's said that the average multimillionaire has 7 income streams. The secret to being wealthy is using your income to buy assets which can then produce passive income in order to pay for your lifestyle. The mistake that most people make is that they just use their income to pay for their lifestyle. Their costs always expand to their means and they get trapped in that middle class hamster wheel, never able to escape the need to work for income. Now, property is one such asset that can produce an income stream which isn't directly affected by the ups and downs of the stock market. The income you receive is a contractual agreement, and having it simply means that you're not totally reliant on other capital. Yes, there is always tenant risk. There could be periods where a property is unoccupied. There are other costs associated with owning property, and that all needs to be figured in. But holding these other income producing assets does reduce drawdown risk, just as having a well-funded drawdown pension reduces the risk of over-reliance on property income. Keeping with the same theme, there are other ways that income can be generated without too much effort every month. I covered some of these very simple ideas in my recent video, The Definitive Guide to Investing After 40. So even if it's just selling unused storage space that you might have at home, that will reduce your need to draw on your capital. You can of course continue to earn money as well through employment or consulting or just doing odd jobs. Every pound generated from another source is a pound you get to keep, which can continue to grow and be used at a later date or passed down to future generations.